Hi guys, my name is Samir Muhammad. Can you hear me? Cool. Thank you so much for joining this session. I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar, which is SharePoint 2019. So my name is Samir Muhammad, and this is a little information about me. SharePoint principal at AQL Technologies, 20 years of IT SharePoint experience, implementing SharePoint since 2003, certified in several versions of SharePoint. And here's my information: email address, LinkedIn, Twitter, blog. A copy of this video for this webinar today will be available on my blog after the session. Just a line about AQL Technologies. Just a slide about AQL Technologies. We are Microsoft Gold partners on SharePoint, and we are also Microsoft SharePoint Deployment Planning Services partner. The thing that you see in blue, which means that you can pretty much accept, we can pretty much accept the Microsoft Green vouchers for assessments or for trainings. We are 30 plus expert developers, analysts, and scientists on the SharePoint platform. AQL has been around since 2006, and we've been implementing SharePoint for the past 12 years or more, hundreds of satisfied clients and growing. And we are focused entirely on SharePoint and Office 365. If you have any needs on any of these platforms, which includes Power BI and .NET as well, then give us a call. And plus, stop by at any Microsoft conference. We just came back from SharePoint TechCon Boston, and those of you who stopped by at our booth in Boston, thank you so much. And those of you who are planning to attend the SharePoint Fest in Chicago, we're going to be there. Please stop by and talk to us. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started with today's session. SharePoint 2019 and what's new. So hopefully there's a little bit of excitement in the SharePoint community I see about SharePoint 2019 version, and it definitely does bring in a few things. And so before we proceed, let's go ahead and just do a real quick poll over here. I'm going to give it 30 seconds or so for you guys to answer this poll. Thank you. So I see that there's definitely people who are exposed to the SharePoint online over here, and that's definitely a good thing to have. So talking about SharePoint 2019, it's SharePoint Server 2019 is a perpetual license. It's the last perpetual license. It's built on the foundation release of SharePoint 2019 and brings you closer to the cloud and brings the cloud closer to you. This is pretty much the line that I have heard over and over again from Microsoft, and that's really what's happening with SharePoint 2019. It's really just just covering that gap of actually going to SharePoint Online as much as possible. You're going to see when I start showing you the demos, you're going to see that there's a lot of similarities between SharePoint Online and SharePoint On-prem 2019 now. So it's just trying to bring it closer and closer. Architecturally, there are not that much changes when compared to SharePoint 2016. It's built on the SharePoint Online learning experience. So anything that Microsoft has learned on the SharePoint Online, they're like, all right, let's go ahead and push that over to SharePoint On-prem as well. You might have already had most of the things in SharePoint 2016, except for a few, and you're going to see some of those things over here. And most of the rich capabilities from SharePoint Online are there. You might not have seen that in SharePoint 2016, but those rich capabilities, those modern pages, all those good things, we're going to go ahead and cover that very soon, and you're going to see a lot of that in SharePoint 2019. So anybody migrating from the older versions like 2007, 2010, 2013, yes, you will definitely see a lot of modernness to the whole page, a lot of rich UI, which is going to be really, really good. So let's go ahead and do a real quick demo over here. Let's go ahead and take a look at SharePoint Central Administration, and you're going to see that there really is not much of change in the Central Administration side. So this is my Azure virtual machine in which I have installed SharePoint 2019. And looking at the Central Administration, as soon as I go in here, the first thing that you're going to see is unleash the full potential of SharePoint. Click here to enable hybrid experience. So it's all about just trying to go hybrid. It's all about just connecting to SharePoint Online as much as possible. It's about trying to use, the features of Office 365, within SharePoint on-prem as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at application management. It's pretty much the same thing. You get to do exactly the same kind of options and features that you had and which you have used in the past. One of the differences might be when you are creating a site collection over here, you can actually choose some of the new modern sites. Like, for example, remember the theme site, which has always been used in SharePoint 2019 and 2016 or the previous versions. Now you're going to see that as classic. It's all going to be just theme site, which means that it's a modern site. And if you click on publishing site, then you're going to see the communication site, which is a second modern site template which has been deployed. So yes, that's a good thing that you're going to see these two templates which are not part of SharePoint 2016 anymore. Talking about general application settings, info path, form services are still there. So that has not been, it's been deprecated, but it has not been removed yet. SharePoint Designer, you're going to see SharePoint Designer settings over here as well. It's SharePoint Designer 2013 is still the version that is available out there. There has not been any new SharePoint Designer versions, released from Microsoft, and that's not going to happen as well. And on the Office 365 side and the configuration wizard side, you're going to see the new wizard, which is launch the hybrid configuration wizard. And so supposedly this hybrid configuration is going to be a lot more easier. It's supposed to be a 3-step process, unlike the PowerShell scripts that we have run in SharePoint 2016 environment for hybrid configuration with Office 365. So it seems like it's not going to be as complex as that. So a little bit of break over there. Just the wizard really does the job pretty well. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the biggest takeaways from SharePoint 2019. And in one word, is going to be the modernness. I see a lot of modernness over here. And for those of you who are experienced, who have a little bit of experience with SharePoint Online and have been using the modern UI, it's the new thing from Microsoft. It's a new UI fabric from Microsoft. It started with OneDrive, and now SharePoint Online has the whole thing, and now SharePoint 2019 has the whole modern UI to it as well. And so you're going to see in SharePoint 29 the modern sites, pages, list, libraries. We're going to do a real quick demo of all of this in a second. Team news, SharePoint homepage. SharePoint homepage was not there in SharePoint 2016 or previous versions. Communication sites and team sites, OneDrive sync client. So the Groove client, which was there in the past, it's supposed to be discontinued. It's going to be discontinued. And then the new sync mechanism is going to be OneDrive sync client, which is the next generation sync client and NGSC. Improve hybrid support and for several scenarios. New developer options. Improve support for business process with Power Apps and Flow. Yes, so there's going to be Microsoft wants you to use a lot of Power Apps and Flow. It's going to require a little bit of configuration, but after that, Power Apps and Flow can be used. Let's do another poll over here. Another 20 seconds. Good. Seems like a decent number of people have been using the modern sites as well. It's That's a good thing. There's a lot of, so I'm going to go ahead and do a real quick demo of the modern UI, the modern UI that you're going to get with SharePoint 2019. I'm going to get started with with creating a document library. So here's my document library, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how the modern UI actually adds so much value to the list and libraries and the document libraries over here. There's so much features just built within the modern UI for using the list and libraries over here that, when I started digging into it, when it came out with SharePoint Online, I was really surprised. In the beginning, I just did not get why Microsoft is trying to push this modern UI over to even SharePoint Online in the beginning. But once I started getting into it, I just love it. And one of the biggest things about modern UI is that it's responsive. You can actually start using it right from the browser. And I'll show you some screenshots as well. And unlike in the past where you just can't access any of that from SharePoint browser or from the browser in itself, you can access the modern pages from the SharePoint browser itself, and it's just seamless. I just love it. So let's take a look at the features built within this modern UI. Like for example, to start with, I can actually scroll the column size, which never happened back in the classic or SharePoint 2016, 2013, 2010 days. So I can literally just expand and decrease the width of the columns over here. So resizing is, I think that's a big thing. Sorting was always there, and yes, sorting is still there. I still love the sorting feature. I can just go ahead and sort it by just A to Z or top to the or oldest to the newest. Grouping is a pretty cool thing that you're going to see over here. Group by practice. So let's just say that if this was a document library in which I was actually storing all my documents, some sort of like a design document for several different practices, maybe a K2 practice, which is a workflow. K2 workflows are Power BI or SharePoint. And if I had several documents in it, I want to go ahead and group them. Just click on Group by Practice, and here I can just go ahead and group it. In the past, you could definitely do it right from the view itself, but you got to go ahead and customize the view. You're going to go ahead and edit the view and then do it. But from here, I could just go ahead and click on any column over here and then just go ahead and customize and do the grouping over here. So ungroup it, pretty cool. Adding columns, it's just pretty awesome. I can just go ahead and add columns. Like for example, over here, if I want to have another column over here, which is going to be description. Choose multiple lines. Yeah, sure, why not? And hit on save. And I just get a column right away. So it's pretty cool. I can go ahead and add as many columns as I want, right from the UI itself. Pinning the documents is also one of the cool features that I like. Just click on this and then just pin to the top. Yeah, just pin the documents to the top. I've been using this for quite some time, and then I just love this. Any important document, any documents that needs some attention, you can just go ahead and pin them. Or after you're done, just unpin them. So that's pretty cool. The properties pane is another very interesting feature of this modern UI. I can just click on this and then click on a document. I'll just click on the properties over here. So this is the properties pane. And then it actually shows me the list of all the properties, Power BI or K2 or any of that. And then I can just, and the beautiful thing is that up in the top, it actually shows me who's got access, and I can manage the access over here. Scroll down and I get to edit the properties right over here itself. So talking about just, hey, entering information right here, Power BI deployment guide. And it just saves instantaneously. So there's no save button. I could just go ahead and just type in the text, and then it just saves automatically. Detailed. Best practices guide. There it is. And bam, just saves right. And it's pretty instantaneous. It's pretty responsive. It actually shows me the recent activity on this, any kind of activity, what's happening on this, who's made edits, who's created these documents, and all different details, information about this document, type of the document, and modified the path, the size of the document. So this properties pane, I just love it. There seems to be, and also what I could do is that what I'm supposed to be doing, and if you have used SharePoint Online, Modern UI, then you would know if I select multiple documents, I should be able to mass edit that, something that I'm not able to do right now. I think that I was able to get into that mode just once, but for some reason it just doesn't work after that. So I'm thinking that there might be a small little glitch in this public release version. So, and let's not forget, it's a public release version. You know, things in here might be a little broken, and things in here might be fixed, and there might be new functionality in here which will be added before the final RTM release as well. So I wouldn't be surprised on that. And let me go ahead and show you how the filter over here works as well. I can just apply a filter, and this filter is just instantaneous. Filter can be applied by the date. I mean, in this case over here, I just have two columns on which I can apply filters. So I can apply filters over here. I can go ahead and apply filter on, let's just say if I want to see just SharePoint documents, just apply a filter over there and then just close the filter pane. And now I can see that there's a filter applied right on the practice itself, and it's just SharePoint documents. So if I have multiple columns over here, I can just go ahead and you will see filter criteria for all those different columns in here. Okay, in my case, I can go ahead and select some more options, and just look at that. It's just beautiful. Once I started getting in this modern UI from SharePoint Online days, I just loved it. And hey, by the way, if you guys are not aware that there's this whole big world about modern UI, which is just taking over the classic UI, and I have had some speaking sessions on classic versus the modern UI as well. But eventually down the line, there's going to be a migration of all the classic pages that you have over to the modern UI. And modern UI does not support a lot of the things, does not support a lot of the customizations which existed back in the classic UI days. So if you are thinking of making any kind of modern UI, making any kind of customizations, then keep in mind that you have to start thinking about the new deployment tools which exist for the modern UI customizations. Okay, and a lot of those classic UI customizations, they cannot be programmed within the modern UI. So this is kind of like a statement to developers to get ready. Eventually, Microsoft has developed these tools, or actually not Microsoft, but I should be saying Patents and Practices has developed these tools for migrating classic UI to modern UI, which is classic pages over to modern pages. So when you do the whole migration, and once you have the classic pages, it can be possible. Some of those tools for migrating classic to modern UI are not that mature yet, but you can definitely go ahead and run a few PNP tools to go ahead and migration. There's supposed to be a one-to-one mapping between classic web parts to modern web parts. So also I can just go ahead and copy, the files over here. Just click the files and then select a folder somewhere deep inside and just go ahead and copy or move these files in itself. And so that's pretty neat as well. For those who are familiar with SharePoint Online, when you click on this option or this ellipse over here, you're used to seeing you're used to seeing Power Apps and Microsoft Flow. That's something that is not available out of the box right over here, and I think that is going to be integrated down the line, but that requires the hybrid configuration as well. And also it requires a separate licensing. The whole and everybody might actually know about that, the whole Power BI and I'm sorry, why do I keep saying Power BI? But it's actually Power Apps, the whole Power Apps. And Microsoft Flow requires its own licensing, and the same licensing is going to apply to SharePoint 2019 as well after the hybrid configuration is done and you want to go ahead and start using it. And the sync over here, so this is a pretty cool feature of sync. And sync, as I said, it's using the OneDrive sync mechanism, which is the next generation sync client. Unfortunately, I click on that, it doesn't work. Okay, again, this is the preview version. It says that we don't support syncing SharePoint on-premises folder, but this is supposed to be coming pretty soon in the RTM version from what I have heard. So let's go. Sorry about that. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the modern sites that I see in here. So I'm going to jump over to the managed services site. So this is an AQL SharePoint managed services site that we have developed, and this is a communication site. For those who are not familiar with communication and modern team sites, these two are the modern pages. These two are the modern sites which actually exist, and these modern sites have been part of SharePoint Online for a little period of time now, maybe for the past 6 months or so, but they don't exist in SharePoint on-prem versions. But now these versions, but these new templates, these new modern templates, they actually exist in SharePoint 2019, and then I just love it. So now when you start using SharePoint 2019, it's more going to be using these new templates, these new modern team and communication site templates. It's got a few decent web parts. I'm going to go ahead and run through those web parts in a second. And we have used this communication site to create this practice, this managed services practice. Communication site primarily is for displaying, is primarily for displaying a product. Okay, so it's like there's going to be very less number of contributors, and there's going to be a lot more of viewers in here. So once it's developed, then you can actually see it looks pretty cool. And this is all responsive again, unlike CQI. So these are our managed services packages. Please reach out to us if you're ever looking for any managed services, which offers anything from end user support all the way to K2 Nintex, Power BI, Microsoft Flow, and migration services. So I'm not going to talk much about that, by the way. So, and then down at the bottom, I have these several different web parts. So let's go ahead and edit this page in itself, and let's take a look at what's happening over here. So the way this has been done is that these are some of the new web parts. When I click on edit this page, I see the first web part, which is a hero web part. You wouldn't see the hero web part in the older versions. And in the hero web part, you can go ahead and specify any images that you want. So it's a pretty cool web part, but pretty static web part. Scrolling down, so this over here, this is a web part, but this is an SPFX extension web part. We have created an HTML, so there's no content editor web part in the modern UI. So which means that if you wanna, so the way we have done it is that we actually took the whole HTML and then we created an SPFX extension out of that and then deployed that SPFX extension in here. So this whole responsive web part that you see over here is HTML built within the SPFX, built as SPFX. Let's scroll down and take a look at the news section over here. The news is the news web part, and it's kind of like it's possible to roll up the news from several different sources. Like for example, in SharePoint Online, you can actually go ahead and pull news from several different sites under the Hub Sites banner. If you have used Hub Sites, it's good. If you're not familiar with Hub Sites, sad news about Hub Sites is that the Hub Sites do not exist on SharePoint 2019. It was developed in parallel with SharePoint 2019. So in the public review, it's not available. It could be available in the RTM, but I'm not sure about that. Digging further down, this is a very interesting web part that I'm going to show you right now, which is a highlighted content web part. The highlighted content web part is a brand new web part in SharePoint 2019. It's all the modernness that's been brought over. And you can actually specify all those documents, all the document libraries. You can specify the source from where all these documents are being retrieved. It could be a document library on the site. It could be the site collection. It could be all different sites. And I can specify a document library on the site. It shows me a list of all the documents. Or let's just say if I say, hey, pull me all the documents from all the different sites that I have. And what I can also do is that I can specify the content type of these documents. And the good thing is that if I end up creating new content types for these documents, I can go ahead and apply filters and pull information only for those specific document content types and show only those documents over here from not just one site collection, but several different site collections. And it's got filter criteria down at the bottom as well. I can apply filter criteria. It could be just title or content or more information. I can sort it, and I can specify layouts as well. Okay. So it's a pretty cool web part. A quick links web part is just nothing but static quick links. I can go ahead and add static quick links over here. And finally, there's a people profile web part. So this is, again, a very static web part, which comes with these modern pages. And you can go ahead and specify the names of those owners of this site or of this page. And then finally, there's a comments web part down at the bottom for users to specify comments. So I think that this actually covers a lot on what are these modern pages. Okay, and let me go ahead and close that. If I go ahead and add a page over here, like a brand new page, you're going to see that this is a modern page that I actually get. So this modern page, which comes with SharePoint 2019, has got a new content type, the site page content type. And the best part about it is the layout. I can go ahead and start with welcome to webinar. And if I were to go ahead and start applying a format to it, then I can go ahead and add new lines over here. And it could be 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns, or it could be a completely. So I can specify the number of columns, the section layout in itself. And there could be several different rows in there. So if I say 3 columns, then pretty much what I end up with over here are 3 different columns. And I can go ahead and specify, hey, what's going to be part of every single column over here. Okay. The same applies for down at the bottom. Click on new rows over here, or just click on brand new web parts over here. Here's my highlighted contents web part that I was talking about. Okay, it just pops open and then shows all the different documents that I have. Go ahead and click on several different web parts. Quick charts. Hey, quick charts is also a pretty decent web part here. I can go ahead and specify all different charts, but it's a static web part. So all these web parts are part of SharePoint Online, and now all of that has been brought down to SharePoint On-prem. One of the other things that I want to show you over here is the SharePoint homepage. So let's go this new page and take a look at the SharePoint homepage over here. So this is the SharePoint homepage, and again, those of you familiar with SharePoint Online, you might be using this for quite some time now. So, but now this has been brought down to SharePoint 2019, and I just love it. In the past, it just was not SharePoint homepage, and so this lets me. So any websites that you end up following, you're going to see there could be hundreds and hundreds of sites that you're a member of. But any site that you want to follow, you can actually go ahead and follow them right from here. Okay, you can once you actually click on following here on the site itself, then you're going to see the site appear right down underneath over here. On the left-hand side for the featured links, the admin can go ahead and edit these links over here, and everybody can see these. So in my case, I edited them, and then I added 2 different links over here: SharePoint 2019 resource, SharePoint 20, and SharePoint 2016 resources. Okay, so I can just go ahead and add as many links as I want over here, and all of them will be visible to all the different users. Down at the bottom, you can actually see suggestions, as well as you can see any kind of activity which has been happening on any of these sites as well. So if anybody has actually been modifying any of these, then you're going to see a little bit of activity of those websites as well. There are jobs behind the scenes which run and which actually update your homepage with all the activity that's been happening. At times, some of those jobs, they run a little late. For example, like this site over here, if I click on this is actually the AQL SharePoint Managed Services title. And when I create this communication site in the beginning in itself, then I create that with this title. And it's been a few hours that this has not been updated. The site in itself on my homepage should show the latest title, which is AQL SharePoint Managed Services. Okay. So now let's talk about in a browser window, classic versus modern. So what you see on the left-hand side is really the SharePoint 2016 2013, 2010 UI. What you see on the right-hand side is the modern UI. It's pretty different, and as I said, it's mobile first. It's all about, it's all about the mobile platform. You can also see up in the top on your right-hand side. Let me go ahead and flash that to you real fast. You can also see the share site option over here. So the sharing has been a lot more easier now versus before. Now I can just go ahead and add any user and include them in any of these members right from here itself. So the sharing mechanism has also been pretty improved. Now let's talk about the smartphone. So one thing about SharePoint mobile applications is that they support both SharePoint 2019 as much as SharePoint Online. So pretty much, and I love the SharePoint mobile app. I've been using that a lot. In the past, AQL had implemented responsiveness in SharePoint Classic pages to make them, mobile friendly. But now that's not the case anymore. Everything out of the box is mobile friendly and responsive. Modern sites are built with mobile usage in mind. You can browse the sites from tablets, cell phones, or anywhere. So now you don't even have to use mobile apps. Actually, if you're using these mobile pages, you can just access the sites right from the browser itself. But if you were to use the mobile app, then it's got the, you have the entire strength of SharePoint 2019 also right in your pocket. And if you take a look at the UI over here, you can actually see how that responsiveness kicks in as well. And I can demo that to you real fast in my virtual machine with this modern UI. If I actually squeeze it in, you can actually see the whole thing squeezes in, and then it just adjusts itself. So this is pretty strong. I mean, instead of the whole package, remember the whole package actually there's several different packages, but now when I squeeze it in, it just readjusts itself. So yeah, try that with classic UI. Best of luck. That's not happening. In the modern UI settings in the list and library, you're going to see this small little setting over here, which is the advanced setting. And this actually this exists both in SharePoint Online as well as SharePoint on-prem. You can display this list using the new or classic experience. So by default, it's set by the administrator, but you can specify to new experience or classic experience. So I think that's pretty cool. And even in SharePoint Online, you can revert back to the classic SharePoint. By default, it's a modern UI experience, which I strongly recommend you keep it the way it is and do not go back to the classic SharePoint experience unless you have customizations that you are deploying from older versions of SharePoint that still need to be used and they're not compatible with SharePoint modern UI. That's the only time I would recommend to keep using the classic SharePoint. These are some of the advantages of modern UI. I'm not going to jump in a lot of those details, but there's quite a few advantages to modern UI. So the new site templates talk about communication site and the team sites. So those of you who have been using the communication sites, and I think I also have a real quick poll coming up, which I want to flash. So what's your reason for staying on-prem? What I've seen is that a lot of the times, a lot of the companies, they stay on-prem is primarily because they have, personal information or high security data, or they just don't trust the cloud. And as for the most part, a lot of government organizations that I have seen doing that are organizations with medical information. They don't want to move to the cloud. Cool. So I see the poll results, which is pretty much just high security data. That makes sense. And a lot of times what happens is that a lot of this information is actually being divided between on-prem and online by using the hybrid approach, which means that a lot of that information, which is private, is actually on-prem, and anything else, for example, team sites, users want to use team sites and stuff like that. Using the hybrid approach, that information is actually just laid out to SharePoint Online. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the new site templates. And the new site templates can be created primarily from the SharePoint homepage. So if I were to go ahead and click on SharePoint homepage over here, then the first thing that I see up in the top is create site. So in SharePoint Online, this is the only way that you can actually create these modern sites: the team site and the communication site. Okay, when you click on the communication site comes with a couple different flavors. May be topic, may be showcase, may be blank. So it comes with, quite a few different flavors. And the different site templates, topic is a template designed to present large amount of information. Showcase is something that if you want to showcase a certain product, then you can actually use the showcase. And then blank is if you really just want to go ahead and start from blank and keep adding a lot more, keep adding the new web parts to it. On the team sites, on the team sites over here, there's just no different flavors to the team site. It's just one straight team site, and this team site is, and I think I have a slide for that coming up soon. It's a modern team site, and it is not associated with Office 365 groups. So I can go ahead and just create a basic team site over here, and this is a modern team site. The second way of creating these site collections is, I can't remember if I can do that from SharePoint Online or not, but I think that SharePoint Online now has a brand new SharePoint admin UI template. I think I might be able to do it from that. But in the past, with the present administration tool in SharePoint Online, you cannot create those modern sites. It has to be created from the homepage. So from here, if I go to SharePoint Site Collection, then I can actually choose the team site template or the publishing communication site. So I think that these are two different ways that I know of that I can be creating these brand new templates from. All right, so let's talk about some of the deprecated features of SharePoint 2019. Access Services 2010 and 2013 is deprecated. Aggregate News Web Part is deprecated, and the Aggregate News Web Part is it will be set in read-only mode. The Grove client has been replaced with a new OneDrive sync client, which is actually the next generation sync client. The Machine Translation Service is deprecated. Performance Point Services is deprecated also. Performance Point was pretty heavy on Silverlight. And back in the days, we had actually used a lot of Performance Point, and a lot of our clients really loved it. But it's so dependent on Silverlight, and Silverlight is just running its course. So Performance Point Services is also deprecated. Microsoft recommends you start using Power BI for that. SharePoint Designer is deprecated also. And again, it's still there. You can still be using it, but I don't think that there's going to be another release. Actually, there is not going to be another release of that, and maybe down the line, it's going to be just discontinued. Let's open another last poll over here. Are you planning a SharePoint migration? I see anybody with different versions of SharePoint 2010, 2013, 2016, especially 2010 and 2013, they've been planning migrations in the past. I've mentioned that it might be a good idea to just either, if you're already SharePoint 2016 might not be a bad idea, but hey, if you can wait a little longer, might be till next year, then SharePoint 2019 might be the way to go. So cool. I see that the 63% are actually planning migration, which is good. So some of the remove features, by the way, on the deprecated feature, really the deprecated features means that they do exist as of right now, but they're going to be removed from the next versions. So you can still be using it, but they're going to be removed in the next versions. Code-based sandbox solutions are removed, completely removed. Multi-tenancy, Microsoft just could not support investment on the multi-tenancy. So multi-tenancy for on-prem has been completely removed. The alternate for that is SharePoint Online, if that's what you want to use. Power Pivot Gallery and Refresh, that has been removed. Microsoft recommends using Power BI for that as well. Mobile access, I think I just covered that. Mobile access support for SharePoint 2019 and 2013. Difference between SharePoint 2016 and 2019. Modern experience is a big, big plus. SharePoint homepage, list and libraries. Oops, I think I was just still on the poll mode, I think. So let me just go back real quick to the remove feature. I think that I was still in the poll mode and you guys might not have seen the screen. So remove feature is code-based sandbox solutions, multi-tenancy, Power Pivot Gallery, and Refresh. These have actually been removed. They don't exist. Microsoft recommends using SharePoint Online for multi-tenancy and recommends Power BI for Power Pivot Gallery and Refresh. So differences between SharePoint 2016 and 2019 public preview is what you see over here. Modern experience, SharePoint homepage, list and libraries, the modern list and libraries, modern theme sites, which includes the communication sites. Mobile ready is a very big thing. Microsoft Flow and Power Apps is also a very big thing that's actually missing. So let's talk about Office 365 groups. Anybody who's on Office 365, I'm pretty sure that they have been using Office 365 groups. In a lot of organizations that we walk in for SharePoint Online implementation, the first thing that we implement for them is Office 365 governance. People don't realize that, there's so much more behind Office 365 that creating one single service ends up creating several different Office 365 services behind the scenes. So, but primarily Office 365 groups are based in Azure Active Directory. These are entities based in Azure Active Directory, for which there is not a connection, right out of the box with SharePoint 2019. So which means that the theme sites are not associated with Office 365. But as from what Microsoft has promised, after the hybrid configuration is done, it is possible to go ahead and hook up your theme sites to Office 365 groups and connect them. So the bottom line is that Office 365 groups are not part of SharePoint 2019. I just wanted to flash this to you. This is a real quick infographic for Office 365 group that I have done. This basically shows you, all the different SKUs, all the different Office 365 services which are created when you create, depending on where you create the Office 365 group from. I'm not going to talk much in detail about that. You can download this slide deck as well as this infographic from my blog. Hub sites, what are they and do I get them? That's a very big question that I get all the time. That Samir, am I going to get hub sites with SharePoint 2019? So hub sites, unfortunately, as I mentioned, they are not part of SharePoint 2019. And seems like they have been developed in parallel with SharePoint 2019. So Microsoft just did not have the right time to inject hub sites into SharePoint 2019. But especially in the public preview, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the RTM. It could be very well possible that hub sites might be part of that, or might be a service pack after that. But as of right now, hub sites are not part of that. For those of you who don't know what hub sites are, hub sites is a way to group all and several different sites together under one single banner. So if you take a look at this image that I have, and this is what I have done in SharePoint Online, AQL has got several different practices like Dynamics CRM practice, Power BI practice, SharePoint practice, managed services, .NET, several different practices. So, and all these practices are modern sites in itself, like communication sites for the most part. But what I want to do is that I want to have all of them under one single banner with the top navigation. And the only way that I can do it out of the box is using hub sites. Hub sites let me group all these different sites together under one single banner under one single group. And there's a lot of things that can be aggregated. Like, for example, news can be aggregated. News from any of these several different site collections are being pulled up automatically to the Hub Site Center, and that doesn't happen anymore. That cannot be done. The Hub Sites does not exist anymore with SharePoint 2019 public preview. Let's talk about Power Apps and Flow. So these are the alternatives to access an info path. If I didn't mention that before, then info path is, as everybody knows, it's just dying its course. But info path is deprecated. It's still going to be supported till 2026, I think. And I think that Microsoft strongly recommends that other approaches be used. For example, my Power Apps and Flow. Hybrid Wizard needs to be configured, and it's got several connectors. Once you have the several connectors, then they can just be connecting right over to Office 365 for using Power Apps and Flow. SharePoint Hybrid configuration. As I showed you, it's a lot easier than SharePoint 2019. It's pretty much a three-step process. It's supposed to be an easier process for configuring SharePoint, and it can be done using the SharePoint configuration wizard. And a lot of times, hybrid brings business to the cloud, and really it brings the cloud to you. You end up using this either if you are having such a big environment that you just can't migrate the whole thing, or to take advantage of the Office 365 features like Power Apps and Flow, or as I said, if you have secure data and if you want to spread the whole thing out, like secure information, the PII, personal information, the secure information stays on-prem, and everything else just goes online. If that's the approach that you want to have, you can definitely do that as well, and that's one of the reasons why everybody does hybrid migration. Hybrid configuration. SharePoint Designer and InfoPath, as I mentioned, SharePoint Design 23 will still be supported. There has not been any major workflow improvements to the Workflow Manager. SharePoint Workflow Manager will support both SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013 workflows. InfoPath 2013 will be supported with SharePoint Server 2019 for the rest of the cycle year, which is to 2026. So I have not seen any kind of improvements on Workflow Manager. If they're tweaking some improvements in SharePoint 2019 public review, the RTM release, then that might be different. But it almost seems like for any kind of new development that you want to do, you might want to start considering Microsoft Flow. The software requirements. Let's talk about the software requirements. It's on the Windows side, it's going to be Windows Server 2016. And on the SQL Server side, it's SQL Server 2016 or 2019. Actually, for Windows Server, it's 2016 or 2019, and SQL Server side also 2016 or 2019. So these are some of the software requirements. Also, the min roles in SharePoint 2016 has been simplified in SharePoint 2019, just like how they were done in, I believe, the Service Pack 1 of SharePoint 2016. So it's a simpler min role. You don't have to have several different roles or several different machines like in the initial release of SharePoint 2016. Project Server 2019. So for those who've been using Project Server 2019, project and portfolio, for those of you who are not familiar with that, project and portfolio, it's a project and portfolio management solution. And this is integrated with SharePoint 2019. And on the SharePoint 2019 integration side, it's all there. You just have to run a basic PowerShell script. It runs as a service application, but you definitely have to buy a license for that. It might actually just require a quick PowerShell script to get it started, but it requires license. It also requires its own licensing, as I just said. Okay. Search. It's got a modern experience to search, and it's contextual type as search. So if you type in the search, it's just progressive search. It just returns you back the results as you keep typing that in search. It has the whole search mechanism that you can go ahead and the whole search configuration just in lines with what we had back in the days with SharePoint 2019. SharePoint 2016 older versions, and I can flash that to you real fast here. Manage service applications and search service application. It's pretty much the same thing. You can go ahead and configure search, full search, incremental search. It's got this content source, content crawls. So pretty much the search, even though on the user side, on the end user side, it has all the modernness within it. But on the configuration side, there's still a lot of configuration that you can do. Migrations. So let's talk about migrations. That's one of the biggest things. So the market introduction of SharePoint 2019 has been announced for the fourth quarter of 2018. More functionality will be made available after that date in smaller updates. This is what Microsoft says. Okay. There is no supported migration path from the preview version to the final product. So all content on the preview farm will be lost. So if you planning on doing a migration, the preview version, and then migrating from that to the RTM version, please don't make it part of your plan. It could be just a pilot or a test migration. But things will change in the final version of SharePoint 2019. Migration needs to follow the usual route of hopping every version after that, 2010, 2013, 2016, 2019. So it can actually become pretty painful if you're starting all the from 2007. Hopefully you're not on 2007. Support for 2010, I believe, has also been ended. So it's going to be just hopping every single version unless you use one of the tools like ShareGate or Metalogix or AvePoint. You know, we are a ShareGate partner. We've been using ShareGate for years, and we just love it. So I think that, as everybody knows, you know, migration comes with a variety of challenges depending on the current SharePoint environment and the requested process. So if you have SharePoint 2010 and are thinking of moving to 2019, again, I would seriously recommend using a ShareGate tool, using one of the migration tools. So finally, SharePoint 2019 is releasing in the fall of 2018, and hopefully you can wait till then. So I think that we still have, 5 more minutes. Anybody who's got any kind of questions, please ask me questions, and I'll try answering as many questions as I can. So first question, will InfoPath be supported? So in line with what I was saying, that yes, InfoPath, and I've also shown that InfoPath services does exist in 2019 as well. Let me go back and flash that to you. So if I were to go back in Center Administration over here and click on General Application Settings here, and so I do see InfoPath Form Services over here as well. So yes, InfoPath Form Services are still there, but they're going to be deprecated. It's not a good idea to keep using InfoPath Forms for your new development. And also the thing is that I want to show you one other thing. If I go over to my document library and then click on the library settings, click on the library settings over here, and then go over to the advanced settings, or actually the form settings. Excuse me. So over here it says that InfoPath does not support customizing the form used for this list. So InfoPath forms cannot be used for customizing any of the modern UI. If this was integrated with Power BI, then I can go ahead and customize these forms. I'm sorry, I keep saying Power BI, I apologize, but Power Apps. If this was configured with using the SharePoint connectors with Power Apps, then I can customize the modern UI forms using Power Apps. In my previous speaking sessions, I've done and actually talked about Power Apps in several conferences as well. Okay. Next question. Can I still use SharePoint Designer? Yes, in lines with what I just mentioned, yes, I can definitely use SharePoint Designer. And SharePoint, as of right now, there has not been any new release of SharePoint Designer. So I can install, so it's all SharePoint 2013 again, and I can go ahead and create my SharePoint workflows within that in lines with what I mentioned. Workflow Manager, I have not seen any improvements in Workflow Manager. Hopefully there's improvement in SharePoint 2019 RTM. but have not seen any kind of improvements to that. Next question: will it have modern pages or web parts? Yes, I think that I showed that as well. It's SharePoint 2016 did not have the modern UI-ness, but SharePoint 2019 does have all the different modern UI-ness. So it's all about the different modern pages which are out there. It's all about the modern UI, which is bringing over architecturally. SharePoint 2016 and 2019 are pretty much the same. There really has not been a lot of new features in SharePoint 2019, except for few things that I've shown you. But modern pages is definitely one of those. What is the best tool that I support that I would recommend for migrations? So as I was saying, there are several different tools that we have used over the years. Maybe ShareGate, maybe ShareGate, or maybe AvePoint, or maybe Metalogix, or maybe QuestDel. There definitely seems to be a few tools over here, which are pretty decent tools and can be used. We use ShareGate a lot. I think that one of the cheaper versions. I think it comes for like $4,000, and it actually does a pretty decent job. We've been using a lot of that. Some of the tools, AvePoint has got kind of like a free version for scanning and generating reports, I believe. That's one of the things that you can actually use if there was a certain reports that you wanted to use. I just don't remember what were the details. Also, there's a fourth tool from Microsoft, which is for migrations. It's actually for migrating to SharePoint Online. That's another thing that you can use if you're going to SharePoint Online. I'm not sure if it's going to support SharePoint 2019. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for attending this webinar. For any questions that I have not answered, I'll get back to you on them. And thank you again for taking out your time. Please do leave me a feedback right after I close the session. I think that a feedback form is going to pop up. It takes a lot to put a webinar together. There's been an overwhelming response to the SharePoint 2019 webinar, so which actually makes me feel that there's still a lot of users who are going to be using SharePoint on-prem, and I'm pretty excited about that. So please keep an eye on our next webinars, and thank you again for attending this webinar.